Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a tag video. So I don't do these very often. I don't think I've done many on the channel before, but my friend Baron tagged me in a Stephen King book tag. And for a couple of reasons, I thought that this would be a good idea to do right now. So number one, Baron has a new channel, so I thought I could link his video below and also tell you guys that you should go check his channel out because he is very smart, very well read, and somehow manages to do excellent reviews in such a short period of time, which is the opposite of what I am able to do. I cannot make a video under 10 minutes no matter how hard I try. So definitely go check his channel out, but also because it is October, it feels like a good time of year to put together one of these book tags that centers around Stephen King. So these are not necessarily Stephen King answers, so you don't have to be a Stephen King fan to watch the video, but the questions were created using the titles of a lot of his different books. So I think there's 15 questions altogether. I have them written down because there's no way that I can remember all of these questions. And I will try my best to give some answers and maybe talk about some books that I don't get to talk about that often. So, question number one is, what is your favorite Stephen King book? So I guess the first question of the video is going to be a Stephen King answer, but the rest of them, or not all of them, will be. I have talked at great length about this. It is very difficult for me to pick a favorite Stephen King book. The Dark Tower series is my favorite body of work by Stephen King. My favorite book in that series fluctuates depending on when I'm rereading it and how I'm feeling, etc. But I think The Gunslinger is as good a book as any to call up as my favorite. I love that book. If it was a standalone book, I would love it just as much as I do right now. And I think that it does a lot of really fun and unique things with fantasy, and was definitely, at the time that I read it, one of the most unique fantasy books that I had ever read. So I love The Gunslinger, will always love The Gunslinger, and I will choose that right now as my favorite Stephen King novel. Question number two is called Nightmares and Dreamscapes, a book that gave you nightmares. I don't. For someone who gets scared very easily, I don't often have nightmares. I don't like feeling scared in the moment, but scary things don't always sit with me for a long time. There have been a couple of books that have had a big impact on me and have affected me for a long period of time. One of which was a Stephen King book. So the book was Pet Sematary, which is a book that explores loss and grief. And I unfortunately read it at a time in my life where I unexpectedly lost a member of my family. And I think it made reading it even tougher. It is a very creepy, disturbing book, and for parents especially, it can be really, really tough. So that is a book that definitely unsettled me for a long period of time. Number three, Joyland. What is a book that made you happy? A lot of books make me happy because I love reading. When I'm reading, I am usually happy. But a book that made me feel almost bubbly with joy was Soul Music by Terry Pratchett. So that is the third Death book in his Death Discworld novels. And it is a book that integrates a lot of humor, a lot of jokes about the music industry, and especially about classic rock. I don't know that much about music, but classic rock is probably the part that I know the best. So I was able to pick up on a lot of the musical references, which would not happen for any other time or genre. And Terry Pratchett's writing is just delightful. The Death books, which are the only Discworld books that I have read so far, just keep getting better and better as I continue to read. And reading that book just made me feel happy. I just felt like I was giggling. I really loved reading it. I wanted to continue turning the pages, and it made me feel really, really happy. So if you need books that will brighten your mood a little bit, then definitely add the Death books to your TBR. Cannot recommend them highly enough. Number four is Misery, which is a great book. Name a book that made you sad. Again, lots of books make me sad. I have a really easy time feeling things when it comes to books. I know a lot of people say like, oh, I've never cried while reading a book. I've never done this. I find it much easier to experience the whole range of my emotions when reading than I do in everyday life. So I think it's because at work, I have to compartmentalize a lot because I work with people who have a lot of really intense struggles, and so that can be really difficult. And if you are feeling everything that they are telling you at all times, you will never make it through a single day. So in my regular life, I feel like I have had to restrict that emotional output a lot, and I don't have to do that when I'm reading. So I can feel lots of things. I cry all the time. I've probably cried like 20 times while reading this year, and I have not cried one time in the last several years just from regular life stuff. So it's a bit of a flip-flop from the usual, I think. But a book that made me feel sad for a long time is The Kite Runner. And I read it a long time ago. I read it whenever it came out. And when it came out, it made me so sad that it impacted me mentally for weeks. I felt like I was genuinely in a slump. I felt like I was sad. I was hopeless. It made me feel so sad that I don't know. I think I didn't read another book after that one for like a couple of weeks, which is almost unheard of. It is such a sad story. And once you think that it can no longer be as sad and it must get happier, it does not. So if you want a book that will completely emotionally devastate you, then read The Kite Runner. It's a fantastic book. I loved it. I will never reread it because I do not want to feel that way ever again. And I remember a lot about it despite the fact that I read it a long time ago. So it will definitely stick with you, but never again in my entire life will I read that book. You could not convince me. The next question, number 5, is Cujo. Who's your favorite animal companion? Another very tough question. I don't think any of these questions are easy for people who read a lot because we love so many things. I could probably do a whole video on my favorite animal companions. So if you would like to see that video, please comment and let me know. But my very favorite right now, I think actively, is Night Eyes from the Farseer trilogy and presumably The Realm of the Elderlings. I don't know, but Night Eyes is a character who I really, really love. He is a wolf animal companion, and wolves are some of my favorite animal companions. I love wolves in general. I think that they're great animals, and I think they make fantastic companions because we want to feel attached to our animal companions, and wolves and canines in general have that. We're already predisposed to think of them as very loyal companions, so I think that translates well into becoming emotionally attached to them. And I think most of us want to feel attached to the characters. That's how we are able to fully immerse ourselves in the story. But Night Eyes is my favorite wolf animal companion for sure, and I think right now my favorite animal companion. It's just such a great character. So good. Oh, I need to read more of The Realm of the Elderlings. Every time I talk about it in a video, I'm like, yeah, I should really start live ship, but I think I'm going to start it next month, so I'm excited for that. Number 6, Dr. Sleep, a book that bored you to death. I like to read pretty widely in terms of genre, and I like a lot of different things about books, so I don't often find myself feeling completely bored to tears, but I don't know if I would feel this way now, but a book that I remember completely boring me to tears when I was in high school is a book called Random Passage. And I am from Newfoundland. I went to high school in Newfoundland, and I think a lot of Newfoundland students read this book. It's a book that has a dual timeline. So it takes place, I don't know if it's like the 1800s. I don't remember when the earlier timeline is, but it is when the British settlers started to come over and settle in the various outports in Newfoundland. And then it also takes place at the time of the cod moratorium in Newfoundland. And there's someone who's working for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So it's this kind of back and forth about Newfoundland culture and what's happening. And there are some really cool things that happen in that book. Like there is a polar bear attack that happens. And the author manages to make that feel very boring. And how you can make a polar bear attack seem boring, to me, takes a special level of skill. So I'm probably being overly harsh because I was forced to read this in high school. It was not the kind of book that I wanted to read. It was not the kind of book that I was interested in, but I had to read it anyway. So maybe that played a part in it, but I just remember being so bored. So, random passage. Can't say that I recommend that you pick it up, but if you have read it, then please let me know. The next one is Eyes of the Dragon, your favorite series with dragons. So if this counts, then I would think that my favorite active series right now is Realm of the Elderlings. I also love The Song of Ice and Fire that has dragons in it, but is that, an ongoing series right now? I'm not sure. I have like a very nostalgic love for this book called Flight of the Dragonkin, which was one of my favorite initial dragon stories when I was a little girl. There's tons of great dragon stories. There as many great dragon stories as you can think of, but I think those are some of my top ones right now. The next question is 4 Past Midnight, a book you stayed up to read for way too long. I could not list all of the books that I stay up too late to read because almost every night of my life I stay up too late to read books because I need to go to bed early, and I don't because I am reading. I will tell you the very first book that I stayed up all night to read was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So book 4 of the Harry Potter series was the first Harry Potter book that I lined up in. And actually, because she is the best, my mom lined up for it at midnight because I didn't want to be spoiled. And I was young, so she had to drive me to the bookstore. But she waited in the line and she went in and checked it out, which was amazing. And we brought it back home. I was actually in Ontario visiting family at the time. We brought it back home and I read it that whole night. So I just stayed up that entire night. I read it throughout the night and then finished it the next morning. And it was amazing. It was my first midnight trip to a bookstore. It was probably the first time that I had ever stayed up the whole night like that because I was so desperate to finish it. And I have really, really good memories of doing so. So, The Goblet of Fire. End of Watch. What is your favorite last book in a series? This year, I have to say, the series ender that stands out the most for me is Tyrant's Throne, which is the 4th book in the Greatcoat series. I did a whole Why You Should Read video series review of the Greatcoats. I think it is a phenomenal series with fantastic character development. And that whole last book is one of my favorite endings that I have ever read. I think that it is fantastic. I think that the choices that the characters make and the way that the story resolves fits in so well. It ties in so well with the themes. We are still learning things about the characters right up to the very last pages. It leaves you emotionally spent after you are finished, and not necessarily because of character deaths, just because of emotional moments and character relationships. So I thought that it was a fantastic ending. Definitely one of my favorite fantasy endings of all time. The next question is The Outsider. What is your most unpopular opinion? I did a whole video on unpopular bookish opinions, so I can link that down below. If you're new to the channel, this is definitely an older video on my channel, but I talked about some of my most unpopular fantasy opinions. I think right now, probably like the one that would be considered the most unpopular, because this author is so very popular, is my difficulty with Brandon Sanderson. I have had a really hard time getting into Brandon Sanderson's writing style, even though I really admire his imagination. I admire his world building. I think that he is obviously a brilliant author, but I am not sure if he is the author for me. I have not read the Stormlight Archive. I have not read Mistborn, so I definitely have to explore his best known and most beloved books, but I do feel nervous that maybe he won't end up being the author for me, and that is definitely an unpopular fantasy opinion. The next one is Rage, a book that you rage quit. Again, I don't have that many books that I quit or rage quit. I remember last year I picked up a book from one of those display tables at the bookstore because I was looking for something kind of quick and fluffy, and it was a YA romance. I believe it was called Of Curses and Kisses. And I think I made it through 3 chapters, and I thought that it was one of the worst things that I had ever read. And I feel bad even saying that because somebody worked on that. They put it out there in the world. They obviously were very proud of it, and I do not want to rip on anybody's hard work, but it was a struggle. I could not finish it. I think I may have even like thrown it at the time because I think I was looking for something so badly. I wanted something exactly like I thought that book was going to be, and it did not give me what I wanted, and I was mad about it. So I think I actually did like chuck that one across the room because it had been one of those impulsive store buys, and then I was mad that I spent the money on it, and then I went to the bookstore, and that was the only book that I came home with. So yeah, that was a book that I did not enjoy. Number 12 is different seasons. Recommend a seasonal book. So it is now fall, so I will recommend a book that I believe is good to read in the fall. Though I have to say, the book Different Seasons, which is a short story collection with 4 short stories that thematically tie into the 4 seasons of the year, is a fantastic book. I think if you're looking for somewhere to start with Stephen King and you like short stories, this gives you a pretty good idea of his range. There is a story that is a coming of age story. There is a story that has some kind of like eldritch type horror elements. There is a story that is incredibly disturbing. And then there is the story that inspired, or the movie The Shawshank Redemption was based on, which is a fantastic, I think just like a good character driven short story. So all 4 of the stories I think are really good. They tie in thematically, like I said, with the various seasons. If you're looking for a good place to start with Stephen King to get a feel for his writing style and the types of things that he does really well, then definitely pick up Different Seasons. I would highly recommend that. But a book specifically that I would recommend for fall is really anything by Neil Gaiman, but I will specifically recommend right now The Ocean at the End of the Lane, because I just recently reread it and remembered how creepy it is, and also just how much I love it. It is such a good book. It's very short. It's like 200 pages, not even 200 pages. You can read it in a single sitting, and it demonstrates so much of what makes Neil Gaiman a phenomenal storyteller. The writing is beautiful. You get this very stark sense of loneliness and nostalgia. It's an exploration of trauma and grief and how what happens to you as a child can reverberate throughout your lifetime, how we deal with topics and information that we're not old enough to understand. It explores so much in so few pages, and it is a beautiful story. I think because of the kind of creepy vibes that it has, it works really well for this type of year, but it is not scary. For this time of year, sorry. But it is not a scary book. So if you're looking for something that is autumnal but not frightening, then you could definitely check out The Ocean at the End of the Lane. The next one, number 13, is Later. So what is a book that you keep putting off? Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I have wanted to read this book for so long, but it is giant and it has footnotes. And I am just intimidated by it because I really want to love it. And people whose literary opinions I really admire say that this is one of their favorite books, and I'm just scared that I'm going to start it and not want to finish it, or that I'm not going to get through it or not connect to it, and it has made me push it off and push it off. I did put it on my list of books to read for 2021, so if I don't read it, I can't highlight it off that list, which will bring me great pain. So I am hoping that maybe I'll be able to read it over the next 3 months, like little bits at a time, but I don't know. Please, if you have read it, give me your encouragement, because I need that to be able to get through it and to make it so that I can finish that book before the end of the year. Number 14, Finders Keepers. What is the most prized book you own? So this actually is a Stephen King answer, because the most prized book that I own is a signed copy of The Song of Susanna. And how I got this book is a very interesting story. I grew up in Newfoundland, as I said, in Grossmoor National Park. And I can pop like a picture up here. It's a very beautiful part of the island, a very beautiful part of the world, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And when I was younger, because I was bilingual, I worked as a tour guide on a boat tour. And I would give tours in English and French to the tourists who were there, talk a little bit about geology, about the natural history, the history of the park, all those kinds of things. For someone who really likes to talk, it was a great job. And I got to talking with someone on one of the boat tours who was from Maine. And I just kind of made the offhand comment like, oh, like Stephen King, because I love Stephen King. And then we started talking about Stephen King, and this person at least told me that they served on a volunteer board with Tabitha, Stephen King's wife. And I thought that was amazing. I gushed a little bit. We talked some more. He left. And a couple of months later, a package showed up at the office for this book tour, or for this boat tour, sorry, that was addressed to me. And inside was a signed copy of The Song of Susanna, which was the most recent release of Stephen King's at the time. I have looked at the signature versus the signature online, and it looks like his signature. I guess there's no way of ever knowing if this man went home and then mailed me a copy of a Stephen King book that he had signed himself. I'm not sure why he would do that, but I would like to believe that it really was signed by Stephen King and that this very nice man went through all that trouble of getting him to sign it and then send it to me. And so, as I will never know the true answer, I can believe what I wish, and it has become one of my most prized bookish possessions. I don't have it on the shelf because I have it bubble wrapped, which I realize is like not necessary in any way, shape, or form, but it's been like that because of moving, and I've never wanted it to get damaged or wet or anything like that, but that is my most prized possession right now, or my most prized bookish possession. The last question is desperation. What is a new release that you are desperate for? So there's no new release that is out that I'm desperate to buy because I pre-ordered a lot of books this year that I have been looking forward to. A new release that has been pushed off a little bit that I'm really desperate to have come out because I want to read it so badly is the third book in the Beartown series by Frederick Bachman. I really enjoy Frederick Bachman's writing. I have really loved a couple of his books, Beartown and A Man Called Ova, but I have only enjoyed some of his other books. But the Beartown books I really, really love. I want to know what happens at the end of this series, and it has been released in Sweden. So I know that it is out now. It just needs to be obviously translated and printed in North America, which I think is going to happen early next year, but I am really, really looking forward to that. Other than that, I obviously want the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. I'm going to be super excited when the next book in that series comes out early next year. But Beartown is one that I have been expecting for a little while. I actually think that the final one is called The Winners? Maybe. I think I read that somewhere, but I am very, very excited for that. But that's it. Those are all of the questions. Hopefully I got to chat about a couple of things that I don't bring up a whole lot on the channel. Thank you again to Baron for tagging me. I'm also really bad at selecting which friends to tag. It brings back too many memories of like not getting selected for teams in school. So if you are watching and you would like to do this tag, please do it. Please tag me. I would love to see your answers, and I will see you all with another video soon. Bye.